Hello, it is Mr. Lila Bubba, and I am back with another Pokemon competitive bio. In this part, we are going to be looking at Chandelure. Chandelure is a ghost and fire type, is currently in the UU competitive tier. However, it should be noted that in Dream World, this Pokemon is OU, due to abilities. Now, we are going to be looking at Chandelure's stats, move pool, abilities, typing, its counters, and then I'm going to give it an overall grade. Of course, I'm going to give all of those aspects of Chandelure a grade, a letter grade from A to F, before I give it an overall grade at the end of the video. Now, the first thing we're going to take a look at is Chandelure's stats. As you can see, Chandelure has a base HP stat of 60, an attack stat of 55, a defense stat of 90, a special attack stat of 145, a special defense stat of 90, and a speed stat of 80. The grade that I chose to give Chandelure on its stats was actually an A. It has very great special attack, as you can see, and its defenses are definitely good. They're not stellar, but they are good defenses. They are very good defenses. It has passable speed as well at a base stat of 80. It's not going to be outspeeding many things, but it's still going to be a very decent and passable speed stat. As I said, its HP, however, is below average. That's what holds it back from having really insanely good stats. I mean, these stats across the board, it doesn't really need much physical attack, seeing as it has all it needs from its special ghost and fire type attacks, as well as other moves, of course. But its HP really holds it back. It stops it from being bulkier. But this Pokemon still has great stats nonetheless. Its move pool, I chose to give an A-. It gets great stab moves from Shadow Ball, Fire Blast, Flamethrower, and Heat Wave. Of course, those fire type moves just all across the board are very powerful. Same type attack bonus moves. It also gets type coverage from both Solar Beam and Energy Ball. And on top of that, it gets setup moves like Will-O-Wisp and Calm Mind and just powerful special attacks to go with its great special attack stat like Psychic. This Pokemon has just overall a good move pool. It's not the most diverse. It doesn't have a lot of different type of attacks and a lot of coverage that it can get, but the moves that it does have, they're very powerful, and it does have ways to cover some weaknesses, so that's why I chose to give Chandelure an A- when it comes to its move pool. The next thing I'm going to be looking at is Chandelure's abilities. Chandelure has 3 abilities, 2 of which are released and 1 of which is not. The first one that is released is Flash Flare, which gives an immunity to fire-type moves, and it actually boosts the strength of Chandelure's fire-type moves when it is hit with a fire-type attack. So not only does this grant Chandelure an extra immunity, but it also raises the power of its attacks when it's hit by a fire-type move. Flame Body is its next released ability. Flame Body has a 30% chance of burning Pokemon that make physical contact with Chandelure. Now, Chandelure has a good defense stat, so being able to wall physical sweepers as well as have the opportunity to burn them just by its ability without having to use something like Will-O-Wisp as a move slot is a great ability to have on Chandelure. It can burn sweepers and just help wall. Now, its unreleased Dream World ability is probably the best one that it has available, but that's the reason actually that it's banned, that ability is banned in most competitive tiers, and that ability is Shadow Tag. And what Shadow Tag does is it prevents the enemy from switching Pokemon. And what you could typically do with Chandelure with this is switch it in to a Pokemon and then easily trap it in there, like trap the Pokemon that you switch into against, and then you can set up with things like Calm Mind, or you can Will-O-Wisp, and you can wear down sweepers, and you can just, I mean, they can't switch out against you, and they'd have to wait until they lose an entire Pokemon in order to maybe switch out to something that could counter Chandelure. That is why Shadow Tag is banned, but that's also why it's very good. And that combination, though, all 3 of its abilities really are good abilities that are usable very, very well, and that is why I gave its abilities an A. The fact that Shadow Tag is banned is the reason it didn't per se get an A+, actually. I think that's the only thing that really held it back. Its abilities are really a strong point of this Pokemon. Now, on to Chandelure's typing. It has 2 immunities. Of course, being a ghost type, it has immunities to fighting and normal. And if you add in the opportunity of getting a 3rd to fire when you give it Flash Flare, I give its typing an A. Now, it's once again very close to an A+, because on top of having all of those immunities, it also has 6 resistances. The only thing really holding it back is its inability to counter its Dark-type weakness. It's really crippling to Chandelure, the fact that it is weak to Dark-type, because it doesn't really have much that can combat that. It gets Psychic, but that doesn't do anything to Dark-types, and its Ghost-type stab don't really do much, so all it can really do is use its powerful Fire-type attacks, sorry. It doesn't have anything to directly combat that Fighting-type weakness. So that's why it gets definitely a solid grade, a really good grade at an A, but not an over-the-top grade. Now, on to Chandelure's counters. For counters, I gave Chandelure an A-. Now, when it comes to the checks and counters for Chandelure, Snorlax is one that can definitely be mentioned, because it can wall Chandelure, seeing as it is not affected by its Ghost-type attacks, but the problem is it can be affected by that burn, seeing as it can't really do much with a lowered attack stat, and it would get residual damage problems. Houndoom is another counter that can be used against Chandelure, but it really turns into more of a check as to something that you would switch in to try to get your opponent's Chandelure to switch out. Because it is too frail to be a full counter, even resisting those Ghost-type moves, it could still be hit very hard with Chandelure's insanely high special attack stat because Houndoom is so frail. And a lot of its counters are crippled by Substitute. They can hit Chandelure, but once it's got those stats farther up there, Chandelure, especially with its passable speed stat, can possibly outspeed some of its checks and counters in UU and hit them with very powerful stab moves. So that is why it's hard. It really is hard to counter Chandelure, but it's not impossible. That's why I gave its counters an A-. It does have some that can take it down, but you have to use it right. And that leads me to the overall grade of Chandelure. This is the part of the video, of course, where I take all of its information on its stats, its move pool, its abilities, its typings, and its counters. I mix it all together, and I give the Pokemon an overall grade. And for Chandelure, I'm going to give an A. A solid A. It is great across the board, as you can see from all of the grades I've given it. Its weakest point is its counters, I would say, but they're not really as potent as they could be. Yes, you have things like Honchkrow and Houndoom and other dark types, but things like Substitute and Will-O-Wisp and just Burning in general could take care of that. Being pursued out is not really something... It's not really something that you would typically see. So this is a great Pokemon to use in UU. It really is. It's a great Pokemon to use in UU. Personally, I highly recommend it, because I think once Shadow Tag is actually released as an official ability, it's going to be basically impossible to see one of these in UU. It's going to move up tiers, definitely, to OU, possibly even to Ubers. This is a very good Pokemon. And it's very close to actually being an A+, if it weren't for the counters that it has being decent and a not perfect move pool, but definitely, once again, a solid A for Chandelure for its overall grade. And this is something new that I'm going to be adding to the end of these videos, and this is what I like to call Mr. Lili Bubba Suggests. And this is where I suggest I guess what you could call an unorthodox set that you could run on the Pokemon that I feature in the video. Of course, the first one is going to be for Chandelure. And this is basically just going to be something that you can maybe look at for reference, to just kind of, or use maybe even, as just sort of an out-of-the-ordinary set. It's definitely inspired by sets that are typically run with the Pokemon, but it doesn't doesn't necessarily follow them, and it kind of switches things up a bit. Now for Chandelure, I'm going to start off by telling you to run a flame body as its ability. Well, of course not telling you, but just as an option. And for an item for this set, I chose the Leftovers, which, of course, if you didn't know, it regenerates 1/8 of your Pokemon's total HP in between every turn. And a Timid Nature, that is going to raise speed and lower attack. Of course, its attack stat is not so great, and attack is not something that Chandelure is going to need. As for its moveset, I decided to go with Substitute, Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, and Heat Wave. And for its EVs, I chose putting 252 into speed, 228 into special attack, 24 into special defense, and the extra 4 into HP. Now, for its moves, explaining, I guess, how to use this thing, you have to get a clean switch in. That is very, very, very important. You have to get a clean switch in. If you're damaged by entry hazards, this entire strategy could really be messed up, and you could, this thing could definitely go down a lot easier. Now, you start off with Substitute. Hopefully, when you're up against something that can't really counter Chandelure very well, if you bring it in on that turn, you can get your Substitute up. And then you can use a couple of Calm Minds, which is going to raise your special attack and special defense both by 1 stage. So it's going to be raising your ability to take special hits as well as upping the power of the Shadow Ball and Heat Wave. And Heat Wave, of course, has that opportunity to burn, so instead of having Will-O-Wisp as a direct way to burn, this of course runs a bit more of chance, but having Flame Body to have an opportunity to burn an opponent that hits physically, as well as Heat Wave that has an opportunity to burn when physical attacks are used, is going to sort of be a switch off for that typical Will-O-Wisp. And Shadow Ball, of course, is just going to be that hard-hitting ghost-type stab move. You could use this thing for actually some sweeping, because the speed stat is very, very passable. It's not great, and it's definitely outsped by plenty of other UU Pokemon, but you can still possibly do some sweeping with this set on Chandelure. And that +4 on the HP is basically just to help regenerate more when you get the lefties boosts in between every turn, and also so that Flame Body can have some sort of effect, because that defense is not going to be so great since you're putting no investment into it. But having the opportunity to burn the opponent is going to reduce the physical damage done to this Chandelure, and that is my suggestion for the day to run on this Pokemon. And that is going to conclude this episode of Pokemon Competitive Bios. If you found this informative or helpful, please leave some feedback. Leave a comment, leave a rating, whether it be like or dislike. Just leave some sort of feedback as to what you thought of the video. Leave a suggestion for the Pokemon you would like to see featured in the next video, of course. That is something that I always encourage. And also, please subscribe to my channel so that you can see more videos like this, more helpful videos, as well as more walkthroughs and less formal videos, I guess you could say. So, thank you for watching, everyone, and good day.